since 1966.
This is NBC4's News Conference with Conan Nolan, Southern California's longest-running public affairs program.
With news of a surge in COVID cases in other states and nations, what really is the likelihood things could return to at least near normal for Los Angeles in the next 2 months? We talk with Mayor Eric Garcetti about that, closing the racial divide in vaccinations, and was the removal of the homeless encampment in Echo Park necessary? This week, for the first time in over a year, there will be students actually on a campus at the Los Angeles Unified School District. We talk with Superintendent Austin Buettner as to what to expect and why it took so long. And political journalist Ron Brownstein on his new book regarding a remarkable year in the history of L.A. Rock Me on the Water, 1974, the year Los Angeles transformed movies, music, television, and politics. Good morning and welcome to the Tom Brokaw News Center here at Universal City. I'm Conan Nolan. Thanks for joining us. With us is Eric Garcetti, the 42nd mayor of the city of Los Angeles. Mayor, nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Conan, great to be with you, always.
So we're seeing COVID surges in other states and other countries. Some epidemiologists are saying a fourth wave is inevitable. Based on what you know, how confident are you in the governor's forecast that we could largely be back to normal by June 15th?
You know, I've never been as optimistic and as hopeful in this past year as I am right now, Conan. So I would say, while I'm still vigilant, I do think things are different. I think that we probably had variants that burned through us in December and January, which is why we had so many cases here. I also know that now we have about 50% of our population that already have had one jab, if not two. Another 50% roughly have had COVID. And so while there's not exact overlap, we estimate it's probably close to 2/3 to 3/4 of people have some antibodies in them right now. And of course, we do encourage people who have had COVID and have not yet been vaccinated to get that. So I do think that we are not only accelerating that we are kind of chasing in front of that, but I don't expect there to be any sort of tidal wave. Talking to Dr. Ferrer, we might see a small increase, and we're going to monitor them very closely. But I remind people that date is real. I don't think the governor was being cynical at all. I think it was great to put that out there, but it's not on him. It's not on me. It's on all of us to continue not doing stupid things, to be vigilant, to not mix with folks who are unvaccinated, to take your masks off, to go indoors, and to share your spaces in dangerous ways. If we continue with what we've been doing, I'm confident we can get there by June.
You targeted black and brown neighborhoods for vaccinations. How's that going?
It's going great. We have 13 mobile teams, and we've been proactively making calls to our hardest hit neighborhoods. This last week, over 137,000 calls with a phone bank we set up to help people who might not have the technology or are in those neighborhoods. We know black and brown neighborhoods, densely populated, lower income neighborhoods. So we've cut in half that disparity together with the county of vaccine take-up in our communities of color. And we're going to keep using the 4 Ts. Telling the truth, this vaccine works. It's even been developed by a black woman, one of them. We're going to use trusted folks that people already know and go to for their health care in the community. We're going to provide transportation, as we've done with Uber and we're doing with other ways, and bringing it right to you. And also we're going to use technology that meets people where they are, whether that's calling people or texting folks in those communities when new appointments open up so they don't get taken by people from other parts of the county. That is working really well. And Dr. Fauci praised Los Angeles efforts as the best in the country.
You said that last week that things like the accommodations for outside dining are going to remain in place until further notice. What changes have we made over this past year that you'd like to see permanent?
Absolutely. I mean, we've learned to be so creative during this pandemic. Part of that was just our survival. We've helped one another. And at City Hall, I've said, let's get out of the way when people see us as an impediment, and let's be there when people need help and they can't find us. So I want to continue some of that assistance, whether it's a basic income pilot here in the city of Los Angeles to help folks who are low income. Or on the flip side, when it comes to City Hall bureaucracy, let's continue doing the al fresco for our restaurants and our bars. Let's look at our zoning and help those empty storefronts where retail might not come back be dynamic art spaces or even residential spaces. Let's double down on our bus lanes and our bikeways and our walkable communities. Because, when we were all indoors, the city kind of turned into zombie land. We've got to come back, roar back, go to the cultural events that we love, the sports events that we love. And I think the city can play a big role in making those things permanent, maybe waiving some permits for folks who had no business this year. So why should we make them pay again just to get their permits renewed? Those things can help us make sure Los Angeles doesn't just come back, but we roar back.
Let's talk about the removal of the homeless tent city at Echo Park. Why was that necessary? And gauge for us the actions of the LAPD.
Sure. People deserve and need to come into shelter and into housing, and parks need to be safe and clean. We had 4 people die there. We had folks who were sexually assaulted. We had folks that were selling drugs, renting illegally unoccupied tents to people who would then use those drugs. It was a disaster for everybody, and first and foremost for the unhoused folks there. It's the largest successful placement of folks from an encampment indoors, with now 3 meals, vaccines, case managers, access to mental health and health care. And all of that outreach was done for weeks and even months ahead of time by non-police intervention. So I want people to know that story of 200 people that we should care about, our brothers and sisters who we stepped up the services for and got indoors. Police were not used to remove any of those folks, except in the very last day after 3 days, 2 people who didn't want to leave, one who was kind of the guy charging rent, and somebody else who had come in from Venice a few days before. And they were released at the other end of the park, so nobody was arrested long term. In terms of the folks that came to advocate, though, I share with them that we have to make sure wherever we can that we're not cleaning or arresting our way out of homelessness. And you'll see in the budget I'm about to release another historic budget that I think will challenge both our state and our federal partners to meet this moment and to match us. 20 new buildings that we bought through Project Home Key, thousands of people we put into hotels through Project Room Key. And lastly, the LAPD conduct is something that always, whether it's, journalists that were involved in there or individuals, that we will always investigate, always hold accountable. But that's never going to be the solution. So we need to have more of that outreach, more of those placements with non-police solutions. And you'll see that in my budget, too, in some pretty bold ways.
You're chairing Metro again. Are you going to abandon fares on rails and buses?
I believe we are. Fareless initiative will help us get our riders back. And I'm very proud, as of September, we will have full service back, even though we only have 50% of the riders right now, which is the highest in the country during the pandemic, but still a cut in half. And I think that making this for our lowest income riders, which is about 70% of them, our students who go to K through 12, like we've done with our city buses in LA Dash, and our community college students, will show that transit can be something free. It helps the environment, improves people's quality of life. It's something that advocates have called for a long time, and it's generating a lot of buzz in Washington, where I think we can get federal funds to help us do this and inspire people to do it elsewhere.
Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Conan. Great to be with you.